Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to RTX. How's everybody doing? Wow, good to see everybody. If you don't know me, my name is Gray Haddock, and I am the head of Rooster Teeth Animation. Thank you. And we've got an amazing opportunity today. We've got some very special guests with us that have come a very long way to give the keynote address for RTX 2017. As though I have to rattle this off, but let's do this. Gollum. King Kong. Snoke. Sorry, my personal favorite, Captain Haddock. No relation, don't worry about that. And Caesar from the Apes trilogy. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bring out Mr. Andy Serkis. Next up, we have a four-time award winner of pretty much anything out there. 4 Academy Awards, 4 BAFTAs, VFX, senior VFX supervisor and co-founder and director of Weta out of New Zealand, Mr. Joe Letteri. Let me make sure that I'm reading this next part right. Carrie Shawcross.
I'm not tall. You can't see me.
Gentlemen, your microphones.
Thank you. Ooh, it picks up. How's it going?
So I thought that we would start off. I would love to have the crowd learn a little bit more about your backgrounds. How did you get to where you are today? In 60 seconds or less. No. For example, I've really bonded with the fact that you have such a strong theater background and transitioned from theater to television. And Gollum was your very first motion capture performance, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. In fact, I never ever intended to be an actor. I went to college to study visual arts. I studied painting and graphic design. I studied, and then you had to do another subject in your first year at college. So I did theatre studies, and then started designing sets and posters for shows. Then I started acting in a play, and then by the end of my first year, I decided I wanted to be an actor. Started to train at a local theatre, and then did 14 plays back to back, rehearsing during the day, performing at night. Learned my craft, then began to do theatre in London, television, film, and then got the call one day. Peter Jackson was making a film of what was it called, Lord of the Rings in.
I think I've heard of that. It did
this
pretty
little
well,
thing down in New Zealand
yeah.
that they were making, and they said they needed a voice for an animated character, and I thought, hey man, look, the Lord of the Rings has got some great characters in it. Can you get me up for a decent role? And then my agent said, well, it's Gollum, and I went, Gollum, yeah, God, I remember Gollum from The Hobbit, and I'd read as a kid, and then we met and we started working on Gollum, and 17 years later. Here we are at the end of just completing War from the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, which I have to confess, I had the opportunity to catch a press screening of it, and I'm trying not to do the geek freakout thing right now, being this close to you with all the detail and nuance just of you as you're standing here conversing. And it's Caesar, the life that you've got just standing here talking was captured by the technology for the movie, and just I'm going to use the word masterful a lot today. I don't normally bust that out. I'm going to go ahead and be using that a lot with this discussion. We'll come back to that in a little bit. Mr. Letteri, so did you started off as a lighting artist?
In film, I started off as a lighting artist. Yeah, I was actually drawn to film just from, the same way everyone else is. How did they do that? These are amazing, watching films like Star Wars or the old King Kong, like any of those growing up as a kid. But I actually had a background more in physics and math and just became interested in computer graphics as what you could do with computer graphics. And then I discovered that someone would pay me to do it if I did it for film. So actually, the first job I ever got was Star Trek VI, blowing up a planet. So I thought, this is cool. I enjoyed that.
Did you do the
inside
purple?
of Gray?
Yeah. The praxis explosion.
Yeah,
That was
fantastic.
my
Am I gonna have to do the rest of this? Are you okay?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I'm gonna.
Yeah, no, that was
I've
my
got something to lean
first
on.
shot ever, so I thought I'd stick with it, and I got to do Jurassic Park after that, and really started about like the natural world and how you create illusion, and really realizing the most powerful part of that is like if you can do it creating creatures, like bringing creatures to life like dinosaurs, imagine what you could do with characters. So when I had the chance to run Gollum, I thought that's the perfect character to do it on. As Andy said, we fortunately got to work together, and I thought, okay, I know how to make this stuff look real. Andy knows how to make it feel like you were there. There's something we can do to make this work, and we came up with this idea of just capturing his performance, and just have been kind of running with it ever since. Yeah.
So what variety of motion capture rigs or setups did you guys use for War? I mean, so like it sounded like, for example, so Carrie just got back from visiting you guys. Carrie and Miles went down to New Zealand and embedded with Weta for a week. And,
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think some RT Lifes are going to be coming out of that shortly.
Yeah, so we got to go. You guys brought us out. We got to see a little bit of the motion capture process, which a big thing for this film was actually shooting on set, which is something that I'd love to keep talking about. But what other what new techniques did you have to develop? Doing the outdoor shoot was, I know, a big step for you guys, and it kind of inverted the way that I think a lot of people think about mocap. Can you kind of talk about that?
Well, I mean, motion capture has evolved. When we started doing it, with Andy, look, Andy got called, like you said, to do voice for Gollum, but he was in there with every scene. Like, I'm not sure if you talked Peter into it or how that worked, but somehow Andy was there in the shot doing everything, getting the emotion from the actors, playing off of each other. And we thought when we started to animate Gollum, it's like, well, that's the performance that we want. How do we do that? And we had a mocap stage we were experimenting with, and we got Andy in and said, can you do that again? And like he did, and it's like, okay, that's the character. We have to make this work. And that's how we proceeded. It was all like capturing your body performance on the first film. But like the face, we kept thinking, oh, we don't have this right. We're having to do this by hand. It was all keyframes. So the next film up was King Kong. And we thought, can we just glue 150 markers on your face and see if we can capture it? And Andy was game for it, and that's how we did it. It was the first time of actually being able to capture the face. So that worked out fantastic for us. As we were finishing Kong, I got a call from Jim Cameron. Jim said, I've got this script I've been thinking about for the last 10 years. Would you guys be interested? And it was Avatar. And with Jim's idea for Avatar was take what we were doing, he liked that idea, but put head rigs on the actors so they'd be completely free to move wherever they want and shoot in this virtual world with a virtual camera.
Sure. Well, let's talk about that for just a second.
Yeah,
though.
yeah.
So how long did it take for you to begin to tune out the face capture rig that was basically adhered to you?
So, well, the first time I used the head-mounted camera was when we were working on Tintin. They were kind of like medieval torture devices, I seem to remember at the beginning. They sort of like bolted into your skull, So it wasn't so much that you could really phase them out because you felt very much a part of them or they felt part of you. It was incredibly painful. Yeah. But then over the years, they've evolved into these very lightweight, head rigs, which you just really don't even feel. And I mean, I've worn them so many times now, I forget I'm wearing them most of the time. And you just, once you're looking into the eyes of another actor, you forget you've got dots on your face, you forget you've got any of that stuff. You're just performing and being in the role and burying yourself in bringing that character to life.
Yeah, I was able to wear one for about 5 minutes, which is nowhere near amount of time that you have, but it almost just felt like an extension of my nose or something. Just like I could see my periph a little bit, but not. Just you look past it.
I think that would be a good point. We have a very special behind-the-scenes featurette that we would like to take a peek at, and then we'll continue.
That's us.
Please tell me that you guys know that there's the screening tonight.
Yes.
You have to check this thing out. Please see it before everybody. The buzz on this thing is going to be amazing.
We got a chance to see it, and it's truly, truly amazing.
Yeah. So there's the performance capture aspect of it. I think there's an amazing amount of sleight of hand that's also going on. How do you guys deal with interacting with the environment? I've got to imagine some of the most challenging shots would involve characters coming into physical contact, particularly if it's a human character, an ape character, or if they're in the environment. What were some of the challenges related to that? And
or riding horses?
Riding horses, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are challenges. For instance, when you're wearing a skin-tight lycra suit and it's a night shoot, 5 o'clock in the morning, and it's -10. That's a challenge. It's also a challenge being on horses. Not so much in this film, but on Dawn. Actually, we had horses that did not like being ridden by people pretending to be apes. Because they were kind of freaked out by that. And there was, I don't know if you remember from Dawn, those of you who saw it, but there's a scene where Caesar rides in with all of the apes into the town square and in San Francisco and says, "Apes do not want war." And I vividly remember every single take, I literally went, "Apes!" And by the time I'd got that word out, the horse had bolted like over here.
Oh, no.
And in the end, it was just virtually impossible every single time. So they did not like. But actually, on this film, they were pretty cool. The horses were a lot better.
And can you talk a little bit about some of the additional physical rigs you had to come up with that kind of helped you with the posture and so forth?
So we. A lot of the apes are quadruped in this movie. Great apes tend to walk on 4 legs most of the time. Of course, these are apes, but they're also apes who are evolved. So they're all at different stages of evolution. But nevertheless, you get used to wearing these kind of they're kind of like crutches, I guess, which have ergonomically designed handles, and they're very lightweight, but they help you move when you're walking on all fours, and they take a little bit of practice to get right.
Yeah, we had a chance to use them, and the motion coach was helping us, was telling us that sometimes you guys you would use them and then throw them off in the same take so that you could then grab onto something.
That's absolutely right.
That's crazy to me. I walk on this for 5 minutes, and my thighs were killing me, and my arms were killing me. I'm also not very fit, so that doesn't help.
I could geek out all day long if people let me, but I just want to ask a couple of questions about, can you talk to us about your process for getting into the headspace of Caesar and what it's been like with the evolution of his story from film to film and preparation for war?
So when I started working on this movie, and the reason that I'm standing here is because of Joe, because Joe sent me the script to this whilst they were heavily involved. Weta were very heavily involved, weren't you? And it was very getting close to production, and I suddenly got sent the script from Joe saying, Andy, you've got to take a look at this. And I read this script, and honestly, it was one of the most moving stories I'd read in film, regardless of the fact that it happened to be about an ape. I mean, I read this story, and it was a complete page-turner. And what I responded to about it was the sense of Caesar as an outsider. Caesar as who is brought up with humans and believes himself to be a human, really. So he's a chimpanzee, but a human. I played him basically as a human in an ape's skin who grows up being loved by human beings, and then at a certain point is cast off by them, has to go and live in a sanctuary with other apes, gorillas, chimpanzees, orangutans, and he sees his own skin for the first time and feels an outsider. But it's this outsiderness that gives him an ability to be a good leader and to empathize with all of those individual races of apes and humans. So he's kind of he possesses this unique quality. And of course, Caesar is also not just an ape, but he's an evolving ape. He is an ape that has been he's the recipient of this enhanced intelligence drug, which is rapidly accelerating his evolution emotionally, physically, and psychologically. And so with each of the films, you see a growth with Caesar, not only in terms of playing him all the way from infancy to late adulthood, but also this psychological, emotional, and physical change as he becomes emotionally and more evolved. So he becomes in the second film a father. He becomes a leader of a society, and we see him helping the other apes to form a society that is coherent, that where they listen to each other, where they are indeed apes together strong. And then in this movie, the empathetic Caesar that we know and love, without giving anything away, because you're probably going to watch it soon, you know, he goes through another big change, which is his the failure to be empathetic towards human beings as a result of what happens, and that again casts him off into a journey of revenge, which is he comes back from finally. So. With all of these stages, they required a sort of a very. They're all about emotion. They're all about you know, something that the audience, Matt Reeves and Rupert Wyatt, when we were making these movies, wanted to make you, the audience, take a walk through these stories in Caesar's shoes, basically, and so I act as the guide really for the audience, and that's yeah, that was the approach.
How did you guys like working with Matt Reeves on these last two movies?
No, it was great working with Matt, because Matt really gets the whole story in his head before he even starts. You have a picture of where he's going with it, and it is pretty deep, like you're saying. Especially on this one, you know, Matt really decided to just challenge the assumptions of Caesar as a leader. What does that mean, and what happens when the things you believe in start to fail you? Can you recover from that? You know, and it was a really interesting idea for a story, and Matt is completely. Like his whole way of working, and I think Andy will back me up on this, is he spends time with the actors. It's a big scene, but he will work with his actors because, like, you can see, you'll see it when you see the film. Matt does a lot of this film in close-up. It's shot 65 millimeter. It's big, epic scope, but it's a lot of it is told in close-up. And like, given that time that he spent with Andy and the other actors, he gave us that same kind of space to create those close-ups for the apes.
How much working with the actors takes place in pre-production, and how much rehearsal, or maybe it's still a little room for discovery, do you guys have in the moment on set?
Well, before each of the movies, there was what we called Ape Camp, and it was really because we pick up with these apes at different stages of their evolution in each movie. It's really important to know how the characters, how their behavioral patterns change, how they start to learn to use language, how they start to learn how to sign, how they communicate as a group, what the hierarchy is. In this latest movie, you know, we did long extended improvisations where we would be for maybe 3, 4, 5 hours, you know, just being in character, learning, you know, Caesar, who he trusts in that group, what his family think of each of the individual apes, you know, Maurice, the relationship to Maurice. All of these things are crucial, so that when you're on set and the camera turns, you don't have to give a second thought to what your role, what your function as a character is in the story. You're absolutely in it. So those were crucial times. Yeah.
I think to both of y'all's points, in this movie, I think one of the things that struck me the most was the facial performances and just the subtlety that could come through those. I mean, between the performance and the technology, you know, every single ape, there was a range of emotion that I would not have expected, you know, like going into those movies, that would even be capable. But it blew me away. It really did.
Again, I'm going to bust out the word masterful again. So, you know, we were talking before, you know, so much of the story on war is told in close-ups.
Yeah.
It's a very, there are huge stakes involved in the story, and we can't get spoilery about it, but ultimately it's a very intimate, character-driven piece. And I cannot wait to go back and see this thing again. And you know, I just want to stare at the character performances over and over. It was just beautiful. On that note, let's go ahead and run another video. This is something that started making the rounds online just a couple of days ago, and it's called "The Faces of Caesar." So, I think it's decently safe to say that the uncanny valley is no longer a thing.
Yeah. It's funny. I was anytime we see behind the scenes from War specifically, I keep expecting to see you clean shaven because I seem like that would pick up the dots better. But it does actually kind of match where Caesar's at right now. He's got a little bit more scruff. It's good reference probably.
But you know, when that video hit online a couple of days ago, I pulled it up and I kept scrubbing back and forth to try and find the different seams in the transition, and it's flawless. And again, it's every nuance of the live action performance is perfectly coming across in the animation these days. It's astounding.
I mean, that is years and years of Weta and Joe and the whole team having a deep understanding of well, my face particularly, but you know, of how to translate that performance. And it's when people say how's the technology changed, it's not just technology, it's how the artistry has evolved as much as anything, and the understanding and the ability to be that detailed.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we use computers as much as we can to help the process, but really, in the final end, we're all just looking at it and adjusting every little bit by hand to make sure we've got it. There's no machine that can tell you, yep, I feel the same thing when I watch Caesar's when I watch Andy, and that's the ultimate test.
And I can only imagine what the partnership between the two of you over the years must have been like with getting feedback on the latest rigs and how things are working out, and you know, getting better at data year after year. I think it's pretty good. It's got to be a pretty special relationship that you guys have got at this point, pretty and unique one in the industry. You guys are trailblazing.
Yeah.
Mostly it's, Andy, can we scan you 100 times again? It's,
Well, they're showing us some. You guys are showing us some, like, you know, models between like the first and the second, or the second and the third, where they're starting to adjust to exactly how, you know, your brow furrows, and just trying to, like, the more they can push that stuff. So instead of the animators having to fight, they can, you know, continue to capture that performance that you're giving them. I think that's really interesting that, you know, they're continuing to adapt these models to reflect, you know, the performance that you're giving. I think it's really interesting.
How about on the rigging side? How did your rigging artists have to study Andy and his physicality to make sure things were mapping well? Because the limb proportions are different. There's obviously some differences between human and ape. What sort of challenges does your team have on the movement design front?
well, yeah, again, that's part of the translation. Because you do have differences in proportion. As much as you do the performance with the extensions and everything, the hip position is different, the leg position is different, and like for example, one of the examples you gave before about when you're using the arm extensions. If you've got an arm extension and you're touching the ground, that means your hand is down here. But if you've got to throw it away then to pick something up, your hand is now in a different place. So in that transition, you have to get rid of the gesture and translate smoothly to the new action, even though the shoulder is now in a different position. So these are things that the animators and the riggers do by looking at both sides of the performance, understanding, okay, what was actually Andy trying to do here, and then just working through that transition, and then just picking back up again into where the drama is. So we're always working through those beats. Yeah.
So, Carrie, you're working on a little thing called Ruby.
Mm-hmm.
We're going into volume 5. We've started shooting it. We've got a ton more in front of us.
There's a lot more.
More than not. But what did you take away from your experience being embedded at Weta and getting to see how they work that might alter how you want to direct motion capture performance at RT?
The thing that I took back was that I'd like us to get new cameras, please.
Noted.
Yeah, no, it's I think one of the biggest differences is that we tend to use mocap as more of a start. You know, we do an anime-inspired show, so we tend to actually simplify the animation a lot, but it's still very important for us to capture, you know, all of the key poses and really get that, you know, that interaction between people. And I think one of the things that was inspiring seeing everybody was how much effort you guys put into that, and that it would not be the same if you guys, you know, just separately went and captured in a room by yourself. Like, it wouldn't be the same. It's not even the same capturing in a room together. For you guys, it was about getting out there. And I think that's one of the important things that I took from it was how special that is of getting everyone together, everyone to see this is the thing that we'd like to make. Now let's make that. And starting from that base, I think is really interesting.
And yeah, we'll go ahead and start pricing out those cameras any day now.
Yeah. If you guys have spares, you just throw them away. We'll just take them instead.
So I get congratulations on surviving the production of all 3 movies. all said and done, looking back, what were your favorite shots, moments to work on? Not necessarily the most spectacular, but something that, you know, when that particular moment goes by on screen that brings back some memory that makes you smile.
I mean, in Rise, there's a particular moment which was a really big character shift, and I'll always remember it. And it happened again. The great thing about, and this was with working with Rupert Wyatt. There's a moment where Caesar has been taken out into Muir Woods for a walk, and then they take him back to the car, and he's got a leash around his neck, and they open the trunk, and you know, gesture for Caesar to get in, and it's a moment where Caesar stops and thinks, hey, no, I'm not a pet. I'm not a pet. I want to be treated. That's not me. I want to sit in the passenger seat. I'm one of you, you know. And that was an improvised moment, which is a big turning point for me as an actor, beginning to understand Caesar and how we could not just make this about apes, but evolving apes, and an ape that is really beginning to think and feel new things, and how we manifest that.
That moment is honestly what hooked me in the first film. It's just seeing, you know, he was the other owner was fighting with the dog and pulling on the leash, and Caesar's just like, wait a minute, I'm not a fan of what's going on here.
How about on the effects side?
Well, I think if you go back to Rise again, there was a moment that was shot from the first trailer that I think was the thing that we all looked at to see was this going to work or not, and it was Andy as Caesar sitting in the cell in the cage, and just watching, you know, tracking the guys go by and thinking about what he was going to do next, like finding himself in this situation, having to figure out how he's going to deal with it, and actually think about the future. You see the transition from ape to this now intelligence that's got to look at the larger scope of things. To me, in that moment is when you see him become a leader. He doesn't know it yet, but you know that's where it's going.
That's cool. That was incredibly impressive throughout the three films. Was obviously, as they've gone on, there's been more dialogue introduced, but between the performance and the way it was shot, there's so you always knew what Caesar was thinking. You know, he didn't have to say it because he couldn't at the time. You knew exactly what emotion he was going through, you know, what he'd just been thinking about, and you could start to tell what he was about to think about. And I thought, you know, again, between the capture and the technology, you know, that without this team, I don't think that would have been possible.
No, and that was great because, especially coming after Gollum, because with Gollum, you always knew what he was thinking. Like, you know, and
he doesn't shut up. He tells you what he's thinking. He's talking about it all the time.
So to switch gears,
a little bit the
Caesar
opposite
was really some nice moments. Yeah, yeah.
So it's got to be exciting. The third movie finally coming out. Everyone gets to share it, and. In terms of what's next, you've got an indie movie called Breathe, or rather, I mean, you've got a movie called Breathe that's just now starting to hit the indie circuit. Congratulations. They're calling it your directorial debut, but you also worked on some stuff in the past. But
Yeah. No, I mean, I was very lucky working with Peter Jackson. He knew that I wanted to head into more directing, and I'd directed short films and video game projects. I'd directed performance capture for video games, and it was while we were leading up to coming back to do The Hobbit that Pete phoned me up and said, "Andy, do you want to come and direct the second unit on The Hobbit?" Which was an amazing opportunity. We shot for 200 days. You know, so it was like a huge kind of education, working at the highest level with top, you know, world-class, you know, filmmakers, and so that was trial by fire in many respects. But yeah, I've just then I started working on Jungle Book, which is coming out next year for Warner Brothers, which is you know, a darker version, a PG-13 version of sort of closer in tone to Rudyard Kipling's book. Again, using performance capture and a wonderful central performance by a young actor called Rowan Chand, who's terrific. And then this indie movie, which is coming out this October, called Breathe, which is a beautiful love story, a triumph of the human spirit over adversity story, based on a very close, my business partner, in fact, his parents' life. Extraordinary life, and it stars Andrew Garfield and Claire Foy, and they're remarkable in it. So pretty excited about that.
And Joe, you're working on a little thing called Avatar.
Yeah, we're finally kicking into gear on that, but also have been here spending a lot of time in Austin working with Robert Rodriguez on Alita Battle Angel, which will be out next year. That's been a great show.
Yeah, I don't know if people have caught it, but the live-action adaptation of the manga Battle Angel Alita is happening, and it's shooting literally in Rooster Teeth's backyard on the same lot, and next door at Troublemaker. But that's just been incredible. But I think we've been yammering for long enough. We should give you guys a chance to ask some questions. Let's do a little Q&A.
Do not run, please.
Yeah, in a calm and
orderly fashion.
Controlled manner.
This side's got a lot more space. We're gonna go back and forth. That's the good idea over there.
And we'll go ahead and start on the left, please.
Hi, for Andy and Joe, I wanted to ask, what is sort of the process on set, and for Andy specifically, the actors you're acting with, you get to see them full hair, makeup, costume, everything, but they get to see a guy in a skin-tight suit with dots over his face and a camera on his head. What sort of conversations do you have before you start shooting to help get into space for the scene?
It's a good question. If you talk to any actors who have been through the process, who are playing the live-action characters in this movie, they'll tell you, like Woody in this movie, that really you spend about 1 minute kind of looking at the dots and the head-mounted camera, and then you completely forget that you're looking at anything else than a character and an actor's eyes, because that's all you need to do is to engage with another actor's eyes and believe, and that's what acting is all about. And so, all of the apes acting opposite each other, we don't see it anymore. We don't see those encumbrances. They just don't exist. You're purely in the moment, in the character, digging deep, finding the emotion, and connecting with your fellow actor.
Thanks. And over here, we'll just keep going back and forth.
Yeah. Thank you all for being here. First off. The nuances in Caesar's performances and all the work that you do is really remarkable, and I look forward to all that. You already answered my question about directing in the future, so I have a question for Mr. Letteri. In Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, I know y'all did some new things with VFX, especially the water on the apes was just really impressive. Were there any new technologies that you had to create for this film specifically to bring this new world and the story to life?
Yeah, Matt thought the water wasn't hard enough, so he pushed us out into the snow. Not only that, he had the characters wrestling around in the snow. I mean, look, fur is hard. You've got millions and millions of these little fibers that all have to react correctly and react to the skin and react to the light. So with the water, you'd have the droplets hitting and gathering and clumping and running off, and we thought, okay, that was great, but snow does a whole different thing. Like, snow builds these clumps of bridges on top of hair that make them behave completely like non-naturally. And so we had to simulate that as well. Clumping, falling off, what's it doing to the hair, what's it doing to the light. Became, a whole nother level of simulation on top of it.
One of the things you mentioned while we were there was, you would be out there on set, it'd be water on the ground, snow on the ground, people wrestling around. Well, they're going to get, the apes on top of them afterward. You've got to paint out all of their wrestling on the ground and put in new splashes and new snow that still matches what it is because the body proportions have changed. So not only you're dealing with that, making sure that sticks, but you've got to get rid of the old stuff and put in new stuff.
Yeah, anytime we're dealing with apes, because the apes are bigger than humans, there's a lot of work that has to go to paint the human characters out and paint them back. Probably nowhere more difficult than on horseback, because we have to recreate the horses, and a lot of that is done with digital horses, either in whole or in part, to fit them to the apes' performances.
And then it gets even better if you have another human. If there's more than one person or character riding on the horse, then yes, that's a bit of a treat, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Next.
Hi, this is kind of surreal. Mr. Serkis, I just want to say thank you for being here. And it is a crime that you have not been nominated for an Oscar or won, especially for these movies. What you do is amazing. I'm serious. Mr. Letteri, you kind of answered my question, but I want to know how many passes does it usually take to do on one shot?
It's hard to say passes because all these things come together sort of in parallel. Like you might be looking at the animation and blocking it in at the same time someone is starting to paint out the snow. Someone else is trying to match the horse in that you need to do. So it all comes in parallel. But but I can't tell you, you'll have a team of at least a dozen people spending probably 3 or 4 months on each shot.
Thanks. Hi.
Hey. As well, Eddie said, thanks for your work. I'm a big fan of you in Lord of the Rings. My main question is, with the fur, like, how much time in general has to go into just that?
Well, see, again, because a lot of this is procedural, you spend a long time figuring out how to do it, and then hopefully you get better at it, and you can run these processes that start to simulate it. Like, because I can tell you when we did King Kong, it took us a year to figure out how to do the fur. Next time, not so much. And by the time we did, War, yeah, not only did we have fur on hundreds of apes, but we were throwing them in the mud and dirt and everything else. So you learn as you go, and you get better at it.
Thanks. Keep up the good work.
Hi. I have a question for Mr. Serkis. So I'm in high school. I've been doing acting for most of my life, and I've done kabuki acting, Shakespeare, contemporary, all that. But I want to know what prepared you most to do CGI animation type work.
I think theatre is probably a good place to start, because the thing about sustaining a character over 2 or 3 hours of a performance of a night, and constantly when you're going into that next performance trying to find new ways of making that character fresh for each performance. You don't just go in and copy what you did. It's a whole different thing playing live, and building characters in that way, it gives you a boldness, I think. Because one of the things about performance capture, there is no difference in terms of playing a role wearing a motion capture suit or a costume, but except for the fact that you have to, you have to be fearless in the sense that you know that ultimately your face is never going to be seen on screen, and you have to trust that the performance that you've given will be rendered and truly honoured, which is of course what Weta have done brilliantly for many years and continue to do even more so. But it's a sense of I think you have to put vanity to one side. And you have to be willing to put yourself through a lot of physical pain as well.
Cool, thank you.
Hi, thank you. I love your work, Mr. Andy Serkis, and I was wondering what kind of work does it take for you to get into a character like Caesar or even like Gollum?
I mean, it involves really digging deep. I mean, for this next movie, which you'll all see, Caesar goes on an emotional journey, which is fairly bleak and hard, and you have to sustain that. And as I was saying, in terms of getting into the character, you have to stay in that place. If you're doing emotional scene after emotional scene, which really for me was the journey of this one. The differences with this from Rise, for instance, and Dawn is that Caesar he's evolved into a much more human-like state. So the emotions were much closer to me as a human being, and it's so that the challenge of this particular movie was to play those emotions as truthfully as possible, whilst not ever forgetting that he is an ape, so that you don't fall off the tightrope and it becomes a guy in an ape suit, and that was the big, and you do that purely by believing, and you're when you're acting, you're tricking your mind is tricking your body and your heart, your organs to feel these things. You go through them for real. So I always, you never come out of an acting experience the same person as when you went in. You are changed, I believe, forever. You're the sum of those big changes that you make. So it costs, really. A good performance really does cost.
How much time are you, on average, getting between productions these days? Is it go from one to the next, or how are you maintaining your physicality to make sure that this instrument that you're relying upon, the conditions can be so intense or grueling for some of these extended shoots? Do you have enough of those back to back that everything is hanging in there and it's flexible and it's doing what you need, or what are you doing in between productions?
I mean, really, in all honesty, and Joe's in the same situation on his end. You know, we kind of, I mean, I'm always busy, so you don't get a chance to really fully relax or decompress or anything. You just suck it up and get on to the next thing. And I mean, the great thing about directing is that it's a different mindset. And I've realized, actually, what I have realized is that I like to fully be in character and play a role, or direct. I don't think I'm one of those actors who can direct themselves particularly, or would choose to do a project where I very much like to keep them divided, the skills.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hello. Well, first of all, welcome to Texas. So I have a question. It's a petty question, so if you don't want to dunk on your colleagues a little bit, I understand. Mr. Letteri, what is your biggest CGI pet peeve? And Mr. Serkis, what is your biggest acting pet peeve? Yeah.
Probably my biggest pet peeve is because you're using a computer, people tend to think about perfection. It's like, oh, there was a mistake there, we don't have to keep it. Whereas I try to push it in the opposite direction. I try to just say, look, if we were doing this live action, you'd live with that mistake and you'd find a way to incorporate it into the story, and that's what makes a movie feel real. So I'm always trying to steer people away from that impulse to fix the thing. I'd rather figure out a way to incorporate it into the story.
So don't fix it in post.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing. All right.
Yeah, we do enough of that.
I think my biggest pet beef is really is actors who refuse to accept performance capture technology as anything other than a technology, and that acting is acting, and that there seems to be this very, a resistance from certain corners of the acting community who still don't believe it is somehow. So I think, I'm very evangelical about it because I'm incredibly passionate about what it offers to actors, and kind of want to say, look, you can do anything, you can play absolutely anything using this technology, and still, you can go from playing a hobbit to a 25-foot gorilla to a enhanced intelligent ape to a cartoon character from a Tintin or whatever. You can become anything, and seeing actors who are who don't embrace that, or somehow shut that part of their imagination down, really that annoys me.
And that's changing.
Thank you very much.
That is changing.
I think like you've led the way there, Andy. But there's a lot of good actors now who are picking up these roles and starting to see that, and it's good to see it changing. Like you'll see what Steve Zahn does in this film is a nice bit of performance that kind of starts to head in that direction.
Thanks.
This is for both of you. What kind of started your guys' relationship in the film industry? How did you guys meet, and how do you help build help you guys become the professionals at each other that you guys are? Where you guys help each other with films and scripts?
I missed the very first part of what you said.
How did you guys first meet to become partners essentially in the VFX world?
It was Gollum. It was doing Gollum. Peter had brought Andy in to do Gollum, and I think, as Andy mentioned, hired primarily, for his voice. He does a great Gollum imitation. So, it was the fact then that he was acting in the scenes, not just standing off to the side doing it. So when Peter started giving us the shots and saying, okay, now turn that into Gollum, it's like, well, what other way would you think of interpreting that performance other than what Andy did? So we asked Andy to come back to see if he could re-perform it for us on a mocap stage, so we could try to capture it and try to use that as the basis. And we just have been working together along that way ever since.
Well, it's been awesome. Keep it up.
Cool. We only got a couple of minutes left, so we're going to do a kind of lightning round now.
All right, I got a quick question for Mr. Serkis. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so when you were announced originally as the new villain Snoke, I'm kind of curious, what was your reaction to becoming the next major force of the dark side, next to Darth Vader and the Emperor?
Yeah, I mean, look, Star Wars is what am I gonna say? Oh, no, thanks.
How was training Palpatine anyway?
No, it was pretty cool. I have to admit, it was like Joe. You know, we grew up with these films, and they're extraordinary movies, and you know, it was just joyous, and to work with J.J. Abrams was fantastic, and you know, yeah, I mean, what can I say? Actually, more than me, my brother is the biggest Star Wars fan on the planet. And I was kind of more excited for him in a way. I was just like, I knew when I told him that it would just blow his mind, you know, and it did. And he's not actually recovered since, you know. I mean, this is the greatest thing I've ever done in his eyes, you know, bar none.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
Kind of a common question for directorial debuts. Kind of how is your relationship with acting affected your directing style, and I'd like to hear about Mr. Letteri, your relationship with directors. Like, how much trust is there in the animation process, like your vision versus their vision?
You know, what I've learned over the years from working with great people, you know, like Peter Jackson and Matt, you know, is actually it's not about a shot. It's to start off with. It's about what the performance is doing, and the emotion of that performance feeds what the shot becomes, and that is, you know, you can approach filmmaking in different ways. You can go in and you can have it all fixed. You can have it storyboarded. You can have it all planned out, and you can not move from that. Or you can go in, have an idea of what you want to shoot, be disciplined about that, but then as soon as you see what's going on, you kind of go, why did I think that? Why would I put the camera there? Why was I thinking that? This is absolutely where it should be, because this is serving the story better. So the emotion of the performances have to always drive what the camera's doing. And that is certainly, as we were saying earlier with Matt, you know, what he took time every day on set to do with this, even in extraordinarily difficult circumstances, you know, halfway up mountains where it's snowing, or kind of, you know, in gullies where the water level had risen and chunks of trees were literally floating, 60-foot chunks of trees were floating downstream and threatening to wreck the day, and yet he's still focusing on performance. You know, that was one of those are the lessons that you learn, I think.
Yeah, and with, you know, anytime you create a CG character, it's always a process of discovery. No one is ever 100% sure starting off if it's going to be the right thing. You know, I mentioned that shot of Caesar from Rise that to me was kind of a keystone moment. And it was one of those when I felt like everyone saw it. You know, Rupert Wyatt was directing at the time, saw it, the studio saw it. Everyone knew that that was the character, and that was locked in. And then we changed him. You'll see he's different in the film than he was in the trailer, because of what we learned just from the nuances in the trailer. We made a couple of slight adjustments, and that was our character, and then you go. And that happens on every film. Everyone, including the directors, trying to make sure you've absolutely got it right before you move ahead. Now, the advantage for us is, having done 3 films, we really got to know these characters. So it was nice to be able to bring in a new character like Bad Ape and to just have that come out of the blue and really explore it.
Thank you.
Over here.
It's an honor to meet you, or not meet you, but get to hear you guys.
Say meet. We can say meet.
Well, hi, I'm Cameron. I'm a film student and I'm an actor, and I really appreciate the guys' work. I like almost shed a tear seeing like the beautifulness of you transitioning into Caesar, and I've been a huge fan of these movies. But my question for you, Mr. Serkis, is in acting, have you ever had problems making eye-to-eye contact? Because that's a problem that I usually have, and I'm not sure if it's just going through repetition or if you have any like warm-ups to kind of just, you know, not break when you make eye contact. To
make eye contact with a fellow actor, looking into their eyes and playing a scene. It comes from knowledge of self, knowledge of yourself in that character, and having emotional ballast and being really grounded in terms of who you are. So knowing your backstory of your character, knowing everything about that being. So you're not just acting. You're not thinking about your next lines. You're not thinking about. You don't become self-conscious in any way. You're totally totally grounded in the character, if that makes sense. You know the emotional makeup of the character, the psychology, you've gone through all of that process to build a role, and then you can stare all day long into someone's eyes.
Thank you very much.
Next.
Hi, welcome to Texas, and just like the last guy, if Suicide Squad can win an Oscar, then you, Andy, deserve an Oscar. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yes. My question is for the both of you. At the end of the day, these characters are still apes, for example, so there's some things that an ape can do that a human possibly can't do, or a human can do and an ape can't do. So I'm kind of curious how you can capture the locomotion of what an ape can do, but still convey a very human character in something like Caesar. Like, we saw the facial animations, and I was also curious about the motion, the full body capture as well.
Yeah, I'd say it's really about honoring the performance. You know, anything that is mechanically different, you always look to what is the intent of the performance. And so when you make the changes, when you make the adjustments, like you said, if you have to adjust the hip position, that's now going to change the shoulders, which is going to change the head. But you need the eye line to be the same, and if you change the head too much, the attitude is wrong. So then you work backwards and readjust it. Like, you're constantly trying to find the balance. And then it's really a holistic approach. Like, you go through all the details and you sit back and you play it side by side, and it really becomes, it's a gut feel. Am I getting this moment? As you play the scene across, does it all make sense? And if it does, great, you move on. And if it doesn't, you go back and take it apart again and try to figure out why. But like the performance is this, it's this ephemeral thing. You're doing something with this technology that you could never do before. You're separating, performance from the photographic realization of that performance. So it leaves quite a lot to make sure that you're actually honoring everything that originated in that performance.
Cool. We're going to have to wrap it up in just one more second. We'll do one more question per side, and then we'll have to say goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Test. Hi, Andy.
Well, hello.
And how are you today?
Very good.
Great. Sorry, that's not my question. There's something I wanted to tell you for quite some time, a few years or so. I really like your hair.
I like my hair.
Great. In all seriousness, no. One thing I wanted to say to you is that actors like yourself, along with Ian McDermott, the two of you were one of my main inspirations to portray any evil and deceptive characters for any of my theater work, dating back from many theater schools I've attended from the years and achieving diplomas from those schools. And I've been continuing to be portraying these physical characters every summer at theater festivals within my country. And yeah, I can't thank you enough for that inspiration for what you've been done this past few years. And thank you so much, and keep up the great work. And I can't wait to see how much more I can do going forward. Thank you. You're the best.
Thank you so much. That's really kind. Thank you.
The hair's even better than
Best
the
of luck.
It's great.
That effect goes up by orders of magnitude the closer you get. Last question.
Sweet. This is my first Q&A. So, Joe and Andy, thank you very much for your hard dedication for pushing motion capture and CGI and all that awesome stuff. And you're very right. Like, you could become anything you want, and I can't wait to see what else you do, because both of you are badass in your area of expertise. And a question, what's your favorite quote from War of the Planet of the Apes, and can you do the Caesar voice? Please, please.
Well, it's tough because you can't spoil it.
Yeah, because I really don't want to spoil it, actually, because I don't think I should. But I can say what I think Caesar really believes in, which is home, family, future.
Guys, thank you so much for being here with us today at RTX. Guys, thanks so much for hanging out. The screening's at the Paramount tonight at 7 o'clock. Look forward to seeing you all there. Have a great weekend. Take care.
Thank you all so much.